This is our fourth and, I believe, final session on Galatians 5:16 to 18. But I say, you walk by the Spirit, and you will not fulfill the desires or the desire of the flesh. That's a promise. If this happens, walking by the Spirit, this will happen. You will not fulfill the desire of the flesh. And that word fulfill there implies that there may still be rising desires of the flesh, but the Spirit will enable you not to bring them to consummation. In other words, you may see them rising, and you will, in the power of the Spirit, denounce them and turn from them in faith in a superior promise. For the flesh, now, verse 17 is puzzling in some ways. I want to talk about it for a minute. It's a ground, and that's absolutely crucial to see. So verse 17 is supporting the promise you won't be defeated by the desire of the flesh when you walk by the Spirit. Because, and then it's a little odd to grasp how the ground works, because the flesh desires against the Spirit, and the Spirit desires against the flesh, and you get a ground within the ground, for these are opposed to each other, only the ground here extends into this purpose clause. For these are opposed to each other for a reason, for a purpose, in order that whatever things you want, these you do not do. You do not do these things. And I translated it very literally, just so you can see exactly how Paul said it. So there is an implacable opposition, conflict between flesh desiring and Spirit desiring. And the reason God has ordained that the Spirit intrude himself into the fallen, flesh-dominated human heart to create this conflict is this. Here's the reason God established this conflict between Spirit and flesh in this world. It won't always exist. In heaven, we won't be in this kind of conflict. We will be perfected through and through, and the flesh will be utterly obliterated. But here's the reason. Because these are opposed to each other in order that, because there's a purpose. And the in order that is, whatever things you want, you not do these things. God has ordained that the Spirit come into the fallen human heart in order that things that you, namely the you yielding to the flesh, you, not do the things that you old you, want. So, I put this you in brackets here because one of the implications of this argument is that there are two yous, or it may be better to say a divided you. There's the you that can walk by the Spirit, and there's the you that wants things that you will not do because the Spirit opposes it. Let me read it again. If you walk by the Spirit, you won't fulfill the desires of the flesh. Why not? Because there's an implacable difference for a reason, an implacable conflict for a reason. For the flesh desires against the Spirit desires against the flesh for a reason. These are opposed to each other in order that whatever you want, you not do these things. In other words, God has ordained that we not do the things we want to do, and thus we get victory over the desires of the flesh. I don't think verse 17 implies perfection. Too much about battle in this book and other books to say that. This is not total and complete and constant triumph over the desires of the flesh, but it is mainly positive. Otherwise, it would not work as a ground for this promise. This is a promise of victory. And the ground for the victory is that the purpose of the conflict is that the old you in the things it wants, it not do. And it not do them because God has put his spirit within us to do battle against the flesh. That's the way I understand verse 17. Now, verse 18, sometimes people have a but here, but the way I've construed verse 17, it is mainly a statement of God's purpose of our triumph over what this old you wants to do, and that we not do them. And so a but doesn't work here if my understanding of verse 17 governs it. And the word, the de here in Greek can go either way. That's a very soft connector as and, or it can sometimes be a soft but. It isn't the word that's going to decide it here. So I'm saying, and in addition to this benefit of the Spirit being given to be an implacable adversary of the flesh and thus give us some measure of victory over the desires of the flesh, and if you're led by the Spirit, another benefit comes. Now, walking by the Spirit puts the focus on our choice and effort to bring our lives into submission to and conformity to the Spirit. Led here is a passive verb. You are led puts the focus on the Spirit's dominant work in taking up the leadership in our lives and making sure we do what he wants us to do. If that happens, you are not under law. Picture it like this. Here's the heart. Law is out here, thrusting its constraints through commands at the heart and telling the heart to do this and that. The Spirit is in here. If you're led by the Spirit, then you're not under this anymore. There are two ways to think about that. For example, chapter 4, when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law. We were under the law as the demander of our lives, under which we were failing. We were under a curse, according to 3:13, and he came to redeem us. That is, by a price of the blood of Christ, rescue us from the curse of the law, to redeem those who are under the law so that we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So the presence of the Spirit in our hearts, leading us, is evidence that we have been redeemed from being under the law. So I take that to be the first and probably the main meaning of, if you're led by the Spirit, if the Spirit is in your heart, and you have it from God leading you, then you are not under the curse of the law. You are not living your life by this external constraint. You're living your life by the work of the Spirit in you, inclining you to be a loving person. And there's a second implication or a second explanation of why being led by the Spirit means we're not under the law. And I take it from a few verses later. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy. So the Spirit has fruit. And when it is in our heart, reigning through faith, it produces love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And then Paul says this, against such things, such Spirit-produced things, there's no law. In other words, when the Spirit is leading us, we're not under the law, not only because it signifies that we have been redeemed from the curse of the law by the blood of Jesus, but also it signifies that we are being led to do things against which there's no law. So if you're led by the Spirit, you're doubly not under the law. You're not under the curse of the law because Christ bore your curse, and you're not under the law as an external constraint because the Spirit within is moving you to do the very things which the law approves. So walk by the Spirit. That is, walk by faith in the superior help and promises of God through the Spirit.